Greetings. Welcome back to another episode of Herb of the Week. I'm your host, Kyle Denton. So glad to be back with you. So happy to be welcome a bunch of new students that signed up this previous week. It's nice to have you. You just found out about it because I just mentioned it, I guess, in the newsletter for the first time. But we've been doing this Herb of the Week since the beginning of the astrological year, which is March 21st, beginning of Aries season. And every week we produce a new Herb of the Week to learn. And of course, they kind of match up within the season, the astrological season that they're in. That's the idea for me. I think it's really helpful to learn. Matching them up this way, it seems to be obvious because it's kind of mimicking the cycles of nature as well. But it also gives us a chance to learn a lot more about astrology and astrological herbalism and just bigger cycles, bigger patterns of understanding. And I just want to express some gratitude also just for my students this year. I was thinking about it this morning. I was like, I wonder how many students I've had from this day a year ago till now. I have my in-person course, and every year I have 20 people. So I got that. I have an online course. And then all of this podcast, I guess I'm counting everybody here as a student and people that come on my herb walks. I have medicine making intensives and everything like that. But in my longer courses that we have in person and online, right now we're in the middle of a segment on water. And that's been really fun to geek out on. We've been talking about the urinary tract and the kidneys and everything like that. But we've been also talking about the impact of water in general, different types of water, healthy water, structured water. And I have such an amazing group of students that I have been learning so much from them. And so I just have a lot of gratitude in my heart right now as we are in the sign of Cancer, right? It's the first water sign, and it rules the protective watery covering around the heart. So how about that? Makes a lot of sense to me. Not only that, but it is the rib cage. It's the structure. It's the things that hold everything in. It's the spleen, it's the stomach, and it also has a lot to do with the lining of the stomach, that like watery lining. Okay, we got like battery acid, something that's as strong as battery acid inside of our stomach. So how do we not keep it from burning us inside out? Well, that's what Cancer comes to do. It helps with the sign of Cancer. It helps with structuring the vessel so that it can hold in that which is precious. And the same can be said about the watery element around the lungs, the pleura. So our herb of the week this week is Elecampane. And Elecampane is a great herb that ties in a lot of this stuff together. It ties in a lot of these organ systems. A lot of people think about Elecampane as a lung herb, but I'm going to show you it has a lot to do with the whole upper torso structure. Very relevant for Cancer season. But I could also make a case that Elecampane could be a Leo herb. And I can make a case that it's a herb that's also really helpful for Virgo and Libra too. But I'm going to stick to Cancer, and here's the reason why. It's blooming in my garden right now. It's blooming. It just started blooming this week. And I thought, you know what? We got to make Elecampane. We're at the last week of Cancer before we move into the sign of Leo. And so to me, it's a really nice crossover. There's a little bit of influence of Leo at the very last part of Cancer, and there's a little bit of influence of Cancer at the first part of Leo. And so my first herb of the week for Leo is going to have that like Cancerian mother-like influence, hint. But you'll just have to wait around till next week to find that one out. All right, so Elecampane, let's talk about it. What's up with Elecampane? I think a really good place to start with this plant is the name, Elecampane. Let's put a little information in our head about the name. Obviously, words have meaning. They have a lot of meaning. Words aren't just willy-nilly. We're not just going around making ooga booga sounds and being okay with that and hitting rocks together against each other and like being able to comprehend things. In order for me to say something and you to actually grasp it, that word or that sound, that utterance, that vibratory disturbance through the ether has to have a recognizable pattern in order for that information to be received. And knowing that there's a logic to that, and knowing also that there's a logos to all of creation, that all these things kind of fit in with creation itself, words are going to have meaning. And that meaning, and these names of plants, how we can, the common names, the botanical names, all the names that you could think of, are going to have an expression of the logos of the true nature of the plant. Not just the plant, but of course anything. But in this case, when we're talking about something close to nature, it makes a very good example for that. So the name, Elecampane. Well, in the Greek language, the letter H is not aspirated like that. It's not huh. So the word Helen, the name Helen, would be Ellen. Ellen. And just like in England, other places where the Phoenicians went, they said hello instead of hello. And we got the H, but we don't say herbalism. In England, they say herbalism. We say, and they call it herbology. And we're Americans. We're like, we don't have herbology over here. We have herbalism. So kind of weird, kind of funny. And unless you're in Canada, then they're like, we love the Queen. We put her on their money. We call it herbalism. And so anyway, Elecampane means Helen, Ellen of the campaign, or the campaign of Helen. So what does the word campaign mean? Well, it means, here, let me just pull up Webster's 1828 online. That's Webster's Dictionary, 1828.com. I have a hard copy. I think everybody should have this book, Webster's 1828 Dictionary. This is one of the must-haves, I think, in every library. But if you don't have it, of course, it's online. The word campaign, C-A-M-P-A-I-N, means an open field, a large open plain, an extensive tract of ground without considerable hills. So when you are imagining this plant, Elecampane, it's got big, huge leaves that are a signature for the lungs, of course. And then it's got a really nice tall stalk. Sometimes it can get 8 to 10 feet tall. And these bunches of beautiful yellow flowers. They're all over the place. And it's designed that way so that it can attract birds, so that birds can come, and so that there's like a little bit of shade, I guess, for other little critters and stuff on the ground. But this is the classic looking big open field type plant, prairie plant, big tall yellow flowered plant. Okay, so there's one definition, campaign. Number 2, the time that an army keeps the field. Oh, so we're talking about like a military campaign, something to go maybe retrieve the princess that was abducted, perhaps. Either in action, marches, or in camp, right? Campaign, without entering into winter quarters. A campaign is usually from spring or to autumn or winter, but in some instances, armies make a winter campaign. So it's got a summer vibe to it. That's what they're saying. It's not like when you make a campaign, you're making a military campaign, you're expecting to bring the boys home for the winter, unless you designate it as a winter campaign, in which case you got to bring enough supplies for them. You got to bring some livestock and grains and whatnot in the military. So all of that stuff makes a lot of sense. And then the word campaign, as we think about it in an election, like an election campaign, C-A-M-P-A-I-G-N, that word is not recognized back by Webster in 1828. It wasn't important back then. A lot of people think, oh, campaigns, they're so important. The election cycle, this is the most important election ever. I don't really care about elections. I don't care about campaigns. I know a lot of people do. It's fine with me. It doesn't bother me that they are. It's totally cool. Everybody's into their own thing. Some people are into things that I'm not into. I'm into things people aren't. It's cool. It's all good. But I think it's just funny and interesting that Noah Webster, when he was writing the original dictionary for English, American English, he didn't care about that word either. So that's pretty funny. Maybe it just didn't exist as it does now. Anyway, so let's think about the original meaning of the word, is what I'm trying to to show here that it has to do with like a militaristic campaign or open field. All right. Helen of the military rescuing of Helen, or this plant that's on the open field. And then also in like just a little green language, this isn't etymology or anything like that. These are just like these little green language things, you know, the songs of the birds, the way that the wind blows through the trees. This is all green language, lingua vert, as opposed to lingua overt. I was just showing you the dictionary passage, and that's lingua overt. That's also a pun, by the way. But lingua vert, the green tongue. Campaign, as in Campaign, looks like campaign. If you like sound it out slowly, campaign. And pagan is just like maybe even a derogatory word for somebody who lives close to nature. Somebody who uses nature and the cycles of nature to have an information about the greater cosmology. That's what a pagan is. So anyway, camping with pagans. I think it would be really cool to go camping with pagans, especially Helen. Well, was Helen a pagan? Probably. She was called that because all the Greeks and all their gods were eventually called pagans by the Roman Church. But okay, so who's Helen? Who's Ellen? Same. Helen of Troy. Helen of Troy. Ever heard of her? You know, Troy? Ever heard of it? The old mythical place, mythical Greek place. We're not really sure where it was or what it is or anything like that. And so to me, that just says it's a astrological place. It's a depiction of something that we see in the sky when we talk about these places that nobody knows of or where they are. But she wasn't really of Troy, Helen of Troy. She was from Sparta. Sparta is where all the warriors are from. That's where you ever seen the movie 300 with all those like sweaty Spartans? That's 300 Spartans that held off like 100,000 Persians or whatever. So super warriors. And Helen was the queen, the princess, something like that. And there was a suitor. The suitor's name was Paris. Paris was Trojan. And some accounts, depends on who's telling the story. Some people are like, Paris stole her and abducted her. And other people are like, well, she kind of like went like willingly because it was Paris, you know? He's like, it's very romantic. That's where the city gets its name, Paris. Oh, it's such a romantic place. Well, not anymore. It's definitely not anymore. But it was when I was growing up. There's this like mythology even of Paris being a romantic place, but it's not. Sure. I guess it's a state of mind. Whatever. Anyway, so she goes off with Paris, whether she's abducted and raped as depicted in some accounts, or if she's just like, oh, I like this guy, I'm going to go with him and abandon my station and my mantle here. And so as she left, let's just say on the accounts of she being taken not willingly, she was crying all across where she would cry. All the little tears fell from her eyes and they hit the soil and up popped the plant that we call Elecampane. And so that was a signal to the we're talking like mythology here, but that was a signal to the mythological soldiers that were tracking her through the, you know, mythological territory in the field. They're like, oh, that belongs to her. I could tell that's the flower that only would have bloomed had Ellen cried a tear and it dropped on the soil there. So that's one way that we got Elecampane as a plant. That's cool. Another is that like she wasn't crying because she was abducted. She was crying because she willingly left, but there was a part of her that just sombers for her homeland. And as she's away, she starts to recall that she was in this lustful frenzy, this fever of not just like sexual lust, but this lust for, wow, what a beautiful place I might be going to. Leaving behind home, and there's no place like home. And by the way, when you leave, you can never go back. You know, that's the other cliche too, because it's never going to be the same. Life goes on. You know, that the tree that was in the park or something like that was your favorite tree. It's not there anymore. Or the town square has been, the butcher's shop is closed or something like that. There's always something different. People grow up, they have new families, and life just goes on, right? Well, when we look back and, reminisce on that, it brings up a lot of feelings of grief and just nostalgic grief. And so that'll bring me to the first virtue of this plant. And it's for this. It's for that feeling that gets lumped into your throat. Oh, I got that lump in my throat. I don't know what it is. I feel like sad about something. Or you know exactly what it is. A lump in your throat. Somebody asks, what's going on? Why do you look so down? And you're not even capable of explaining it. You wouldn't understand. That's nothing. Because it's very personal. It's this very personal type of expression. Well, if I try to explain it, I think I might just cry. I don't really want to cry right now. Don't have space for that. And maybe that, and then we might, I'm just generalizing, not necessarily y'all listening, but people. We have this tendency to suppress things to more opportune times to look at them, or suppress them until they force us to look at them, or whatever. But we'll push that feeling down until it comes back up again. And Elecampane is really, really helpful for bringing that up. So there's also the idea too that Helen is going to a foreign land. She's leaving her own land behind where she can express herself. She knows the music, she knows the tones, she knows the scales, she knows the songs of the birds. She knows the green tongue, she knows the overt tongue. And if somebody were to ask her, even her maidens or whatever that are combing her hair, they're like, hey, what's going on, Helen? You look so gloomy today. You're the most beautiful woman in the world. That's what Wikipedia says. And she's like, I don't know. Well, I'll tell you why. And she'll be able to kind of explain it. But when she leaves her land and she's in a new land, speaking a new language with a new tongue, there's new bird songs, there's new things. It's people that don't understand the same type of feelings. They don't have the same feeling that we had before. So might not even be able to physically express it. Might not even have the words for it. Can't say. I don't know. What is the word for? I just can't find it. And that's that form of suppression as well. And so Elecampane is great for that on a spiritual and an emotional level. Working with Elecampane, whether you buy it, whether you're taking it, ingesting it, or whatever, it really does help bring that feeling up closer so that we can examine it, so that we can release it and move past it. And so it doesn't consume us and just feel like it's dragging us through the day. Instead, we can acknowledge that emotion. And so I think it's specifically a great plant for women who are in different countries. That's what I think. I have one of those in my house actually right now. It's my wife. She's from a different country. I think it's a great plant for expatriated immigrants, or just somebody who had to flee under whatever circumstance. They did it willingly. They like being here. They didn't do it willingly. They're a refugee. Any type of feeling that comes up from that, like feeling lonely, feeling like you're missing out. All my friends posted a picture together. They're at the beach. God, how I miss them. Or my homeland, how it's suffering right now, or anything like that, or even just having the taste of home, little taste, maybe where you're from, the flavor of basil is so reminiscent of just being at home or something like that. So I would, not saying make an Elecampane pesto, but I'm getting my wires crossed here, so better bail on the basil on the basil example. Sorry about that. All right, you get the point. All right, so anyway, it's the root of the plant that we herbalists like to work with, really in particular. Of course, you can work with the flower essence and stuff like that, and I think that would be brilliant for what we were just talking about. And if you need some, it's in bloom at my house right now. I might make one. I think I will, in fact. But normally, what I do is I wait till the fall, and after it's pretty dang cold, maybe around October, there's been a freeze once or twice, and then I go and I dig up the root. I ask the plant really nicely. And so I grow it. I have several growing in my garden. And basically what happens when it gets cold is that the starches of the plant start to get more sugary. It changes the nature of them, and it produces more inulin. And inulin is a non-digestible fiber. It's a prebiotic. It's something that helps improve your gut flora. And there's plants that are really high in inulin are also really good for your gut digestion and bringing your microbiome back online, nourishing your microbiome. We have probiotics, which are like the actual gut flora themselves. You can get that from different kinds of bacteria, things like that, different types of ferments. And then you have the food for the bacteria, which is called prebiotics. Prebiotics are that one of the best ones is inulin. Plants that are high in inulin are burdock, are onions and garlic, and also another plant that we're talking about today, Elecampane. The botanical name of it is Inula helenium. So it's noting there's this inulin quality to it. So I go in once it's like fall and the ground's not frozen or whatever, and I dig up this root, and that's when I process it, and that's going to have the most inulin to it. And then I would like to describe the flavor and the scents and the smell and everything like that in order to give you a better idea about how this plant works. So it's very, very peculiar. The scent is really, really out there. It's wild. So it's pungent, which is my word for like spicy aromatic, really aromatic. It's bitter. So plants that are aromatic and bitters are really special because aromatics move things outwards and bitters move things inwards. Aromatics say, bring our attention out from our egg consciousness shell and let us examine the fields out there. And they do the same thing physiologically. They move things out. Bitters bring our energy from our periphery back into our digestive system and allow us to be rested and rooted. And so when you have those two combinations, those two foundational action combinations, it has a profound healing effect on the body. And they work in many different ways, and they're really good at what they do when you have those two combinations together. So you have that. It's got, I wouldn't say it's demulcent, but it has like an oiliness to it. So it does support like the moisture in the body. It does that through the bitter action as well, but it does that constitutionally through this like oil that it has. Some people say that it's really warming. I say it's really warming. I think it's really warming. Other people say, no, it's cooling. It's really cooling. I think it kind of depends on the batch, how you're harvesting it, your constitution, how you interpret warm, how do you interpret cold, like cooling action. But to me, it's because it's like profoundly aromatic. I think it's very, very warming and exciting to the body. It's really exciting. Now the smell is something too. My assistant Paige always talks about how it smells like a old man that smokes a pipe and hangs out at a bookstore and probably knows how to play the violin. It's just like a Renaissance man, and he wears cologne. It has that like cologne, sophisticated old man, not like unhygienic old man, like hygienic. Somebody that's got probably like a really nice bottle of scotch. It might even smell like a little bit like scotch too. It has that like perfume scotchy kind of smell to me. It's really, so here we are, we're talking about this like womanly cry your tears out on the field kind of plant. But when I describe the smell and the way that when I consume it, to me, it has more of that Martian, like masculine energy to it. And that's where the word campaign actually, comes from also. It's this like martial, you send your troops out. They're going out there. And not the stupid troops either. Like the ones that are like, we're going to just do our job, but we're going to take back all the books. We're going to make sure that we wrap up the statues really good and bring them back to our museums. It's not just like the troops that are going in and burning the place down. So as an aromatic bitters, like, I'm going to name a few right now. There's Angelica, which is a really aromatic bitter, and it works similar, has a similar qualities of virtues as Elecampane does. Yarrow, which is a lot different, but similar in that it's aromatic and bitter and has this diffusive action, as stimulating diffusive action that can move in and out of little cracks in the body and find the most proud areas that need healing. And so Elecampane is similar, and the way that it works, I think the greatest virtue of Elecampane is in the signature, once again, of this big long leaf that looks like a lung, very lungy leaf. It's so lungy that it's also kind of hairy, like the cilia of the lungs as well. So it has all of the features of the lungs that we want to look for in a lung plant. And again, going back to our episode on hyssop and horehound back in Gemini, when we were talking about lungs and talking about lung medicine, hyssop and horehound also have this bitter aromatic quality where they can help degunkify a stuckness in the lungs, especially like a lot of the old timers called it humor, which is just like stuck fluids basically. But I could say congestion in the lungs, like mucosal congestion, really strong mucosal congestion. And what the aromatics are going to do is expectorate, move that, stimulate, move. And what the bitters are going to do is moisten from the inside out. So the way that I described it before is how I'll describe it again. If you have a lasagna or a casserole or something like that, and you take it out of the oven and you have half of the casserole, and then you put that same casserole pan in the refrigerator, and then you heat, and then the next day you got your leftovers and you put the casserole pan back in the oven, you're kind of baking on the grime and the stuff, the leftover lasagna cheese on half of the pan. And it's going to be kind of hard to take it out. You could scrape it out, and you might even get, chip your pan and stuff like that. But the best thing to do is just to soak the pan, right? Soak the lasagna pan overnight, put it in the sink. Hey, I can't do the dishes right now. I'm soaking the pan. It's a great excuse, right? Everyone's used it before. Yeah, I just got to soak the pan. Yeah, I guess somebody else will have to do the dishes another day because pan has got to soak. Can't really scrape that stuff off. So that's what bitters do. They soak to that baked on mucus. But if it's heavy too, maybe you left a bunch of lasagna in there. You didn't actually like scrape all the lasagna. There's like one layer of pasta still at the bottom. And so that's what a lot of Elecampane mucus looks like too. It's like this really thick stuff. It's got to come out and it's got to get soaked from the inside out. So as an expectorant, it works great as an expectorant. Drinking the tea, because it's bitter and because it's aromatic, is going to make somebody feel like coughing and have a productive cough. This is great for people who have had a cough for a long time and their lung tissue is like sore, or their pleura, the like watery tissue that holds in the lungs, so it starts to feel scraping. It's like the lungs are swollen, the pleura is swollen, and so it's like scraping on the ribs. Ouch. Or you feel like your throat is really scratchy and dry because you've been coughing a lot. Maybe you don't cough all day long, but you lay down at night and there's like just a bunch of mucus down at the bottom of the lungs. And so when you lay down, that's when you start coughing. All of these are reasons for having a productive cough, getting whatever's in there out, like boom, bring it out with something that's going to soak it from the inside and something that's going to stimulate it to go. So that's the thing about Elecampane, and maybe even, I wouldn't say the warning, but let's just have everybody on the same page. When we take Elecampane, it's going to make you cough, and it's going to make your cough productive. If you don't have a cough, it's not necessarily going to make you cough, but it's going to make mucus, whatever stuck mucus is there, come up. So a lot of times people will take Elecampane and they'll say, oh, this stuff made me cough. Well, wait, didn't you have a cough? Yeah, well, it was making me like really cough. See, just stick with it. Just let that Elecampane do what it's got to do and make a productive cough so that your cough is gone. It's been coughing for so long. And that your lungs are sore. So somebody like that, somebody who's got a condition like that, Elecampane is great. We put it into our Nail in My Coffin cough syrup, available at tippecanoeherbs.com. which is the sponsor of this program. And it's also the main ingredient in my Young Lung tincture for the same reason. Restoring the tissues, helping with. So Matthew Wood says, and I agree about Elecampane. He says a lot of things about it. I'm going to talk about a lot of the things he says. I got his Earthwise Herbal right in front of me here. He talks about Elecampane being a specific remedy for green and yellow mucus. And so what green and yellow mucus indicate to me is, in a foundational sense, is tissue states of heat, something that is hot and inflamed, as opposed to a cold, unproductive tissue state, which would be like white and chalky white. So it's kind of interesting, though, because Elecampane is so aromatic and so warming, but I also think because it's bitter, its bitterness is cooling the areas that need to be cooled. And that would be the production of the mucus around the lining of the lungs. I remember when I was growing up, I was always trying to remember, there's one of them that's like, green means it's viral and yellow means it's bacterial, or wait, is it the other way around? I can't remember. No, I don't think that's correct. I think it's just easier to think that green and yellow mean inflamed tissue state. And that way we don't have to make any claims about the nature of microbes or infection or anything like that. It's not even our department. It's a lot easier to just have energetic names like hot and cold and damp and dry. The other thing that Matthew Wood talks about, and that I also think is really cool, and I've been playing around with this a lot, is when somebody is coughing up a lot of mucus and they're swallowing it, and it causes illness in the digestion. So who would do that? Why the heck? Why would you swallow your mucus? That's disgusting. Why don't you spit it out? Well, that's also disgusting, right? So there's a lot of reasons why somebody would, because it's gross to spit it out, because it's gross because maybe they can't. Maybe their reflex is only capable of if you're like a ping pong ball and you're going pump, pump, pump from the bottom of your lungs up to the top and you can let it out. But maybe you're a little baby and you haven't learned that reflex yet. Or maybe your lungs are very tired and weak because you're getting old and they also can't do that. Or maybe your lungs are really tired and weak because you've been coughing for like the last 3 weeks and they also can't do that. So there's a lot of reasons, physiological reasons, why somebody would swallow their spit. And to me, it has a lot to do with just like that reflex. And then of course there's behavioral reasons too. And it doesn't matter either way, somebody's swallowing their mucus, it's going to have like an effect on their digestive system. And so this is another great virtue of something that has inulin that's really going to stimulate the digestive juices to flow as well. So not only is it working on moving the digestive fluids in the lungs, if you could call them that, the lung fluids that digest the mucus and move it away, I guess is what I should say. But also the digestive fluids where they ought to belong. And sorry if I made that confusing, but you don't have digestive juices in your lungs, okay? I'm just making a little metaphor. But it fires up your digestive juices in your digestion. Just like Angelica does. Angelica does that too. It also moves the fluids in the lungs and the fluids in the digestion. Angelica does something that does something really, really well too. It also helps birth the placenta after birth, the angelic twin. And so does Elecampane. So they're really similar in a lot of ways. They're different plants entirely, but they have a lot of similar actions because to me, I don't need to necessarily know what this plant looked like when I'm tasting it. I could tell, oh, this is bitter, this is warming, this is stimulating. I can't tell if it's warming, I can't tell if it's cooling. I know it's going to do these types of things in the body. And the same could be said if I tasted Angelica. The same could be said if I tasted Osha or a lot of plants that have those similar kind of flavors. Lovage is another one, lovage root. So it's a great plant for the digestion, stimulating the digestion, especially a lot of times people are thinking about like mucus-free diets and getting rid of mucus detoxes and stuff like that. Think about Elecampane. Add that to your protocol if that's something that you're doing, the mucus-free diet. Maybe just, a couple of weeks on or something like that, not just constantly taking Elecampane. I think it would be better to have lifestyle changes that don't produce mucus. Whatever that is, it's different for everybody. Some people are like, don't, how dare you? You should never drink milk. And other people are like, no, it's the pasteurization in milk. You got to drink raw milk. It doesn't produce mucus. And everyone's got a different body type. Everyone's got a different blood type. So I don't think that there's a particular answer on how to get rid of, or like what stops, what in the diet prevents mucus buildup. It's just a personal thing. I like it that way because that way I don't have to have an identity with my diet or or with espousing one either. I'd like to take a trip back upstream a little bit for a second here. And so I kind of skipped over the throat aspect. I was talking a little bit about, the lump in your throat and the emotional part before I got into the other virtues, but I would like to condense that further into a physical form. If somebody has throat and tonsil issues, swollen tonsils, that could be, in German New Medicine, a lot of times if you look up, if you experience some symptoms, look up those symptoms in German New Medicine. It'll be very interesting. It'll be a very interesting shamanic journey for you to consider these types of things. But if you investigated some shamanic reasons why somebody would have a sore throat, those things would be that person isn't saying what they need to say, or they can't say what they need to say. There's something physically blocking the throat chakra, that energy center. And as a result, it's manifesting in this illness right there. And so looking at like swollen lymph tissue, swollen tonsils, recurring swollen tonsils from that perspective is one way, or just looking at it and just being like, yeah, there's swollen tonsils, that's what I see, swollen tonsils. Elecampane is a great plant for that. So swollen, sore throat, lungs that are full of goop, sinuses that have like greenish or yellow mucusy color that's coming out in your coughing as well, swallowing too much mucus, digestive fire, and birthing a placenta. That's where we're at right now with Elecampane. And so how many people are like, right now, they're like, I just got to get this placenta out. I don't know, maybe a few. Anyway, so Elecampane, the powdered dried root, like you take the root, you dry it, you powder it. This is one way that a lot of folks like to use this, and they'll use it as a like a compress, or they'll put it into a wound for what is called proud flesh. So the word proud to me is a Leo word. That's definitely a Leo word. And the way that this plant looks is very Leo-like as well. Like it's got these yellow flowers, it's showy, it wants to show itself off, it gets tall. It's not like super duper duper beautiful like a lot of Leo plants are, but it is kind of a look at me plant. And the lion is known for its pride. And so here's a remedy for the proud flesh. What's proud flesh? It's flesh that won't heal at all. Why not? Well, who knows why, but there could be a lot of reasons. It could be an infection. It could be like some sort of resistance. It could be these spiritual things that I'm talking about. I really think that has a lot to do with it a lot of times too. But I think this is a great remedy for proud flesh. That could be, what it does is another name for this plant is scabwort. Scabwort, as in it's it's turning your scabs into warts. Just kidding. As in the word wart means medicinal plant. As in it's making scabs, something that's not scabbing over for whatever reason. And a scab is good. We want scabs. I need to remind myself that because I have always been a scab picker. I like that. I like peeling the glue off of the Elmer's glue bottles. I've always liked that too. Um, and that's why I like flossing my teeth, because I'm like, ooh, good one. That was nice. Glad I got that one out. Okay. There's something else I wanted to mention too. I'm just jumping around here because that's what I do. I don't really have like a script or whatever. I'm just kind of letting it flow. This is always flow state. All of these episodes are just flow state. So I'm thinking about the word inula once again and how it means like, how it's related to inulin, this prebiotic. And the word inula is connected to the word annual or annul. And the word annul means null, means zero. Like an annulment means like you've canceled out the wedding. It never existed. Or an annulment in other ways. So null, zero, void. And that's really interesting spiritually to me. This idea of we have this microbiome inside of our body. Okay, when I'm speaking and I'm thinking about where my consciousness is as I'm projecting, I can see it. Just initially. I think the initial surface level of where it is like right behind my eyes. Like I feel it kind of like around in my third eye, my face. That's where I feel like my consciousness is. Sometimes in a meditative state, I feel it down in my heart. Sometimes in a deeper meditation state, I get behind that. Like I realize that those are also, both of those, like wherever is also a projection. And I can get there very briefly sometimes. So that's me. Where's you? Where's Kyle? Where's the person talking? Where's the person listening? Where are you in your body? Are you like in your head? Is it like right behind your eyes? Think about that. Where is your consciousness? Okay. Now we're also told that we have this like symbiotic relationship with a million, billion, trillion, gazillion, ferillion bacteria that live inside of our body. And the tube that's running from my mouth all the way down to my butthole, that's not actually me. I think it's kind of a psyop in a way, but just thinking about it for a second, I think that's what we're told is that like what's me is like what's been absorbed through that tube. I eat a burger or something like that, and then the burger doesn't become energy to me or doesn't become anything to me until it like gets broken down by all this microbiome and whatnot, and then gets absorbed into my body. And then it's like me. Then I'm like, you are what you eat, right? Well, it's not me yet until it gets absorbed. Is all that making sense? Okay. So now we have a conflict. There's a conflict. There's two different things. There's me, this consciousness, what I call my organism. And then there's this other driving intelligence community that's going on inside of my body that has maybe if the biome is like more yeasty in nature or something like that, more candida, then it's like, let's convince our driver of that meat suit to get sugar. Let's go to ice cream. Yeah. Let's convince our meat suit to have another beer. Beer. I love it. And then I wake up in the morning, my consciousness is like, oh, it wasn't me. It was those damn yeasty bacteria driving me to drink. So there's definitely an influence, right, on our cravings and behaviors and everything like that, even our consciousness and intelligence and our immune system based on our relationship with our microbiome. And so we also have a conflict as well between like what's me and what's not me. Well, how about we take that division and zero it out, nullify it, annul it with inulin, with inula helenium, with inulin. So we're nourishing it, we're giving it, we're the ones that are taking control of this garden within our body, so to speak. That's another like esoteric thought that came up. It's really profound, and I don't know if I can explain it better than that. But something to think about, something to meditate on. Okay, so let's see here. At this point, I think I'm just going to introduce some ways to work with Elecampane and teach you a little bit about some medicine making tips. There is I think one of the most famous ways of making medicine with Elecampane, because it's such a strong flavor, is to do it with honey. So we can make what's called an electuary. An electuary is honey and powdered herbs, typically. So you take your herb, take your powder, you powder it really good, you put it into the honey, and it kind of like solidifies the honey, depending on how much honey that you use. Usually you're covering this powder with honey and then maybe giving it a little bit more headspace of honey. And some fermentation and changing relationship of the honey kind of happens. And not fermentation, that's not the right word, but it changes the way the nature of the honey. It becomes maybe crystallized. It becomes, some cases, if there's a little bit of, depending on the plant, it could be watery or whatever. But if we're powdering the herb, that means the herb is completely dry. So it's not necessarily going to like ferment it. But in any way, that's a really good way of working with Elecampane. Taking some Elecampane, powdering it, or getting some powdered Elecampane, putting it into a jar, covering it with honey, and then when you need it, when your kids need it, when you have some proud flesh, when you have a burn, when you have a placenta or something like that, you want to birth, anything that I talked about. Oh, you're like torn away from home. You miss your friends. You miss your home. You miss your mom. Miss your homeland. Whatever. That would be a really good one. So one of my students, who I consider a peer and very wise indeed, name's Amanda, shared a great idea with the class. And this is making an herb that helps you speak your truth, like calamus, and covering it with honey and consuming it with honey so that the words are more sweetly absorbed. So I got something to get off my chest, and it's going to make me feel better to get it off my chest, right? Well, if you're very compassionate and empathic, like this person is, or like a lot of us are, sensitive to the world, that actually might be one of the reasons why we're holding something in, because we don't really want to get everything off our chest and have it like hurt somebody else, you know? So yeah, there's plants that help us get these emotions off our chest. Elecampane is a great one. Calamus is another good one. But yeah, sometimes we don't always want those words to be like swords or to be like target, you know, to like have a target that's like, that we're cutting down. Sometimes we just want to blow that steam off without anybody getting burned by that steam. And so adding that to honey, adding these plants to honey so that the words are sweeter, so that they're felt sweeter. That's what Amanda, my student and now at this point teacher, taught me. So excellent advice on that one. So I love that for Elecampane as well, as like not just like sweetening the medicine and the flavor, but also sweetening how the reaction is from the expression of whatever it is that we're getting off our chest. Sometimes being around sick people, one of the reasons why it's so difficult to be a healer, I guess, if you want to call yourself that, or be in that role, take on that mantle, is to see people at their worst and not have that judgment, not have that like contamination of your experience with them in your memory, and just be able to ground that energy out, give it back to the earth, give it back to God, give it back to wherever it's got to go and where it can be transmuted, but not just hold that pain as well, because then you're going to have to deal with it. Right. And so, as somebody who has to tend to their children, or as somebody who has to tend to their parents in old age or something like that, and these types of things come up, I love the idea of Elecampane and honey, or calamus and honey, or whatever in honey, so that it doesn't feel so edgy to the person that's taking care of them as well. So brilliant. So an electuary of Elecampane. How fun is that to say? An electuary of Elecampane. It sounds to me like somebody that would be sitting in a bookstore smoking a pipe that had Scotch cologne. They would be talking about these types of things. Elecampane electuary. Of course, you can make a tea with it, but it's really, really, really it's really strong flavor. So I definitely wouldn't like add a bunch of it to tea. Try it. I don't mind a little bit of Elecampane when I need it for whatever reason I need it for, but I'm not just like, I'm just going to have some tea. Let me make a tea here. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. How about a little Elecampane? No, it doesn't really, doesn't really work that way. It's not culinary. It's very medicinal. But that when people need Elecampane for medicine, it's not going to be gross. Okay. And another way is as a tincture. I think that's a great way too. When I make a tincture of it, I want to have that inulin in it. So I'm going to strain it through something that's not completely like, I want to strain it through a straining colander rather than a cheesecloth, or rather than like something that's got a really high micron, because I want that inulin to come out. I think a good Elecampane tincture has sediment at the bottom of it that you can shake up, and then it turns like cloudy. I think that's what a good Elecampane tincture is going to look like, because it's going to have that inulin in it. You can, things that have inulin, when you pickle them or ferment them, and you could do that with Elecampane too, it makes the ferment like cloudy and fuzzy. And when I first started doing that, I did that with burdock once, and it got all, and I was like, dang it, this whole thing got moldy. And I tossed it. And then I learned later that was the good stuff. I was like, dang it. Shouldn't have thrown that away, but I just totally tossed it too. And I was like, now I can't use this jar again either. I don't want to use the jar. It's all moldy. Sometimes I get like that too. So I just toss the whole thing. So know that that's going to come out. Know that it gets like cloudy, and that's good. Okay. That's going to be good in your tincture. And then as an incense, that would be wild. It's really wild smell. So it's not like it would be a very ritualistic incense to me. And I would add a bunch of other stuff to it to make it, to like subdue it and make it pleasant, but it could be a really nice smudge, super nice smudge. So if you're feeling trapped and you're a woman that's been torn away from homeland, or you have maybe you're working with a past life kind of thing like that, or you're just kind of feeling that way right now. Maybe it's not your homeland, but maybe it's a new town or a new place or something like that. I think burning a little bit of Elecampane on a charcoal, or adding a little bit of Elecampane tincture to your candle or something like that, I think that would be really cool. Enchanting for that, setting that mood, dispelling that feeling from your confines, and bringing you to a place where you feel like you're in a wide open field and you can campaign back and forth as you please and communicate. So that's Elecampane, and that's the herb of the week. And that's Helen of the Campagna. And thank you so much for joining. I don't know if I have anything else to say. I'm just checking my mind real quick. There's always something. I get done with these and I'm like, oh, dang it, I wish I would have said that one. But that's why I'll leave the comment section open so that we can communicate. So if you got something to say about this, leave a comment, and I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining, and until next week, ciao for now.